Hello and welcome to Bread and what the
Stupid.
That's my
And
attempt
it's
at
so good to
acting.
talk to you.
Yeah, how are you, sir? Oh, I
It's
should
great.
introduce you first.
No, no,
This
no, no,
is
no.
this is
No
Ben
need.
and Bran See a movie, and with me is not Branson. We have Doctor Joshua Whitney.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. It's been a long time coming. I
it
think I
has.
was banished after the Dune episode once
You
again.
weren't you weren't banished. There had to be consequences.
Yeah, I feel like I paid my dues for the Phantom Menace podcast, and then my hiatus went up, and I immediately banished myself again a
Yeah,
second time with the Dune series.
well, what happened was the ratings were like actually like too good that I couldn't keep you banished.
Yes,
Like
excellent.
that Phantom Menace episode is still like just randomly just really high for view count.
Yes, it's because my takes are not controversial at all. They
Yeah, they're
are
very calm,
no, I
collected,
years of research have
well
gone
thought
into my
out.
decisions and my background,
Is
really.
that what you got your doctorate in?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a wide range of movie knowledge that I bring to the table that has
Yeah.
earned me a doctorate, and I'm excited to share some of that wisdom with you today, just in case you throw out any bad opinions.
Perfect, perfect.
Mhm.
I'm always glad to have you keep me in check.
Mhm.
That's going to be really useful today. We
Yes.
are talking the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a 2019 release. Josh, you jumped in last second for me because I was originally had a guest on, but they had to jump out for this week and we're going to reschedule them. So I asked you to do it, and you so graciously decided to do it last minute. Knowing you put all your prep work into this. I'm sure it was
Yes.
sleepless nights.
Yes, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been years in the making, so really there was no need for me to prep
Yeah, of
last
course.
minute.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, excited to have you on this.
Mhm.
And the agreement was that if you did this episode, that I would officially schedule Tron Legacy,
Mhm. Mhm.
which I have officially put on the books. We will either
Excellent.
do it. I will talk to you about your schedule. It's either coming end of August or beginning of September.
Good. Good. Yes, that's what I did my dissertation on, so
Yeah, perfect. So, with that all said, we are doing the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood today. And this is a fun one for us. You and I actually saw it in theater together.
yes.
You and I were the only ones who walked out of that movie screening together of our group who went that like actually like thoroughly loved the movie. Everyone else was like, what was that? Or I don't fully know if I like that or all that. You and I were fully on board with this movie from like day one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good movie, really. Anybody with taste would know that.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know who you'd be calling out in our friend group.
I don't either. I'm just really calling out anybody that doesn't like this movie.
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
What I'm really excited for is the fact that, like I said, we're talking this movie, and this is the first time you've come on to the show and not talk Star Wars or science fiction. So it's a
Mhm.
nice change of pace for us.
Mhm.
And with that said, I think it's time to jump into the movie. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I'm
Oh,
ready.
actually, no, we should not. There is. Did you watch the Andor trailer this morning?
I did.
What did you think?
I liked it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
good.
really good.
It was really good.
It was good. And we talked about it a little bit too about how uh it definitely feels like Lucasfilm might be throwing a little bit more of a budget towards
Is it
the Star
weird?
Wars projects.
Is it weird how good the trailer looked? Like, I mean, like not like just like quality wise. I meant like visual wise. Like there is like an actual like scale to this TV show that looks like movie quality.
Yeah, I think yeah, there certainly is like a movie quality to it, and I'm still trying to figure out if that's because the budget for the show is somehow more than what they've done in the past for television for Disney Plus, or is it that the director and the writers and the people that are in the back end of the Andor project, since they are this for the most part the same people that worked on Rogue One,
There's a good
if it
handful coming back. Yeah.
right, if it's just their level of talent
It could be. The one thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about it earlier, this is one of the earliest Star Wars TV shows announced, right? Like, I think we heard of Mando, Clone Wars, and this, right? Were the three big shows that they kind of announced Disney Plus with.
Well, I think Andor was one of those original projects that they were looking at expanding on when they were still considering doing a movie every year. And they had talked about Obi-Wan being a movie, which obviously we're now, we've seen the entire series of that. It very much felt like it was a movie that had been chopped up and sliced into ways to make it a little longer for television. To me,
Yeah,
that didn't work, but
it
it
didn't
did
fully
feel
work.
it felt like that's what that was. And I do think that Andor was one of the projects that they had ready to go, or at least that they were considering right on the heels of Rogue One. So I don't know. I'm really hoping that this is something that they've always intended for television and not some other, movie spliced up into a TV show. And one of the
It's
things
yeah,
that you said that I really liked was you were excited that it was actually going to be, was it 12 episodes or
it is
16?
12 episodes.
So
Like,
that's
that's an
promising.
actual like length of a TV show. Because
Right.
that's been my biggest issue with not just the Star Wars projects Disney has done, but the Marvel and just in general what they've been doing. It's
Hmm.
been 6 episodes, 30 minutes each,
Hmm.
30 to 40 minutes each. We're talking about a 3 hour to 3.5 hour movie.
Yep.
Just edit the movie
Right.
like properly and actually give it the budget. And that was my huge thing with Obi-Wan was my criticism was like, why is this not just like a 3 hour, really well done Star Wars movie with like a $200 million budget behind it?
Yeah. And that was something I think we were feeling in Boba Fett also
Boba
is
Fett looks so bad except for like those 2 episodes.
well, not only is it tiring at this point to see the same desert scenery that we see for most of Boba Fett, it's also like we've talked about off air, it's that lack of scale and that the lack of budget really to make the world come to life that kind of pulls you out of the Star Wars universe in my opinion. I think for Star Wars, you got to go big or it doesn't work and
Yeah, you do.
hopefully they learn their lesson for Andor, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing about Star Wars is it's like a huge part of the movie is visual wonder.
Mhm.
And like when you strip that away, it really lost a lot of its specialness. Like
Absolutely.
it was just because like it's not supposed to be this like revolutionary story. Lucas never intended it to be a revolutionary story. He bases it off the hero's journey, which is a reason that is like an architect of story type. It's
Mhm.
because it's been done before and it's a pattern that proves to work, but that doesn't make it revolutionary. We're not going to see these for necessarily like this is going to be the greatest story ever told.
Mhm.
It has an epicness to it, but not necessarily that like uniqueness to it.
Yeah, and my concern right now is they develop this technology with the video wall so that they can use the Unreal Engine to simulate environments and save a lot of money on CGI where they can plant real actors in an environment that they generate. And to me, that was a really exciting technology that they came up with for Mando season 1. And my concern now is that they might be leaning on that a little bit too much to guide their storytelling for these future Disney Plus projects. And that maybe isn't the way to go. I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
I'm kind of on the same boat. I always have been in the belief that practical will always stand the test of time and special effects are always going to age worse because technology is going to increase and increase.
Hmm.
So I feel like the more you use practical, especially in Star Wars, I mean, the whole aesthetic of the original trilogy, which is where Andor is supposed to be set,
Hmm.
is practical.
It is interesting though how almost at the very least, right, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are entirely CG or mostly CG, I should say. And those still have a very big sense of scale to them
Mm.
that somehow Lucas is able to capture a little bit better, I think, than they're doing right now with their current video wall technology. So I don't really know what the issue is. I think it just comes down to budget
That's
and
what it's felt like
yeah.
for me too. Yeah.
And just in general, I think the passion that everybody on the original movies and the prequels, had for every attention to detail, I think maybe you're losing it a little bit since these projects have to come out year over year.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, totally.
there's a pressure to deliver, and I think it's hurting the quality.
And I've talked to you off air about this as well, like the idea that something doesn't feel as special when it becomes episodic,
Hmm.
because it's like that idea of like, oh, well, if I don't even like, Obi-Wan, I have Andor coming out in like 6 weeks. And if I don't
Right.
like Andor, I'll have Ahsoka, and then I'll have Andor season 3. So it's just like, even if it doesn't fully work for me, it's not like this is my only Star Wars property. It's like something coming, and that has the positives and negatives. That means that the shows being bad don't hurt me as much, but it also just makes the quality of and the brand lesser to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
And that
it's
was
the
one of the things that
payoff.
made it so special, right? It's like Star Wars was one of those few projects for a while that at the very least captured your imagination, and everybody could agree the time each of those movies came out, they were visually impressive, or they had impressive qualities to them that kind of set them apart from other films. I mean, if you look at other movies that came out in 2002, I mean, what are
Mm.
you even talking about? You know what I mean? Like Attack of the Clones,
Yeah.
maybe the story's not great, but the visuals in 2002, I mean, they for a lot of those scenes, they still hold up to this day.
Yeah, because 2002, you have Pirates of the Caribbean coming out the next year in 2003. You have Master and Commander. I guess you have Gladiator in 2000, but it doesn't feel like special effects are quite at the level that we're going to see them at. Because, I
Right.
mean, special effects changed pretty drastically after Gore Verbinski works on the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean, where, I mean, they just make Davy Jones a CGI character and it looks almost flawless. And then same with Avatar. So, but I mean, Lucas is kind of the pioneer in all of that. I mean, that's the one thing you could never take away from Lucas, despite all the criticisms he does get,
Mhm.
many of them maybe rightfully deserved as a director slash writer. He has an eye for visual storytelling that very few other directors, even like some of the best, can never quite replicate.
Yeah, have you ever watched those behind the scenes of, like, the prequels and stuff where he goes to, like, the model shops and they've got, like, 6 or 7 different models of a character that they wanna use, and they're like, "Okay, George, which one do you wanna use?" Or, a ship or something, and he just, like, goes down the line and he's just like, like, "That one, that's the one," and it's
Mm,
like the Naboo starfighter, and you're like, "Well, that's really fucking cool." Or
yeah.
but then, like, some of the other ones, it's like, "Man, that wouldn't have worked," and somehow Lucas just had that eye and that vision for kind of like what was going to be like the coolest thing to the most people, and maybe that's one of the biggest things that's missing from all these projects is maybe there's a model room somewhere with 6 or 7 different models, and whoever's in charge nowadays is just not picking the right one you know
Yeah, it totally can be. There's a lot of these things that come up. I forgot to mention, did you know we have a friend, and I won't mention their name on air in case I can't say it. We have a friend who is working in the studios in Hollywood.
I think I
They're
know who that is.
currently, yeah, they're currently contracted with Disney Plus working on one of their TV shows.
Yeah, I think I knew that.
Yeah, so that TV show that they're working on,
Hmm.
which isn't like Star Wars, Marvel, it's just one of the Disney like Plus shows that will be coming out this
Hmm.
Christmas is
Right.
Clue. Yeah. Uh
Okay.
they're using the wall to wall special effects that were used in made by Mandalorian,
Yeah.
and they got to go in there and they've been working in there, like getting to see that, like how it all comes together. So they were telling me about it. Really cool stuff. Like,
Yeah, I've heard it's really
it's
cool.
like groundbreaking technology. So even if like I understand why they're relying on it, like you just kind of want to play with your toy.
Yeah.
That's always kind of been Favreau's like maybe not weakness, but it's definitely something that has always come through. Favreau really likes his new technology,
Mhm.
and like he'll like play with it, and maybe it's not always for the benefit of the movie. Like I'm
Mhm.
remembering like he directs like The Lion King fully in a VR headset.
I
But
think
then
that's
like,
really cool.
yeah, it's really cool. And then none of the lions have emotion in the actual movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
That's
that's such a
creative
weird
decision
movie.
that's kind of like weird, but
Yeah, it's such a weird movie because it's like, yeah, the film looks incredible. and
Yeah.
I also like don't care about that film.
Well, you have to understand also, like, that isn't all Jon Favreau's fault, I don't think.
I
I think
think
they asked him to do live action Lion King, and that's what he did. It's a live action Lion King. And to be fair, it's not a bad movie. It's just not
I
different.
see. I think it's a bad movie. I think like the emotionlessness of the movie makes it just feel really like stiff.
Yeah.
That's a rough movie. We're actually covering that one on the podcast, I think, this year in honor of the new Pinocchio movie, live action Pinocchio.
Oh fuck, that's gonna be bad.
That's gonna be. I don't think Robert Zemeckis ugh, not had a lot of wins recently, but yeah. Anyway, that's our thoughts on Andor. Real quick, that comes out, dude. You're
They
gonna
pushed it.
be. They pushed it. They're releasing the first 3 episodes together. I
Yep.
think it's like September 17th. So you're gonna have like 5 weeks to watch. So you'll be on like episode 5. Then you got to go on a honeymoon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure you're just gonna stay up till like 2 a.m. and just watch it.
I'm gonna be doing my honeymoon in Mexico, so I don't know what the time difference there looks like, but we'll see. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
gonna be a lot of relaxing, so we'll see if my fiance allows me to make that part of my relaxation. We'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll see.
I don't know.
I know you. If the show's really good, you'll be staying up like past like 3 a.m. when she's fallen asleep and be like, all right, on your iPhone, just
Yeah,
watching it. Yeah,
it's definitely possible.
it's pretty weird like how excited I am for a show that I really like. I liked Rogue One a lot. I did not care a ton for this idea.
I
And
think
then
that's how
like
everybody felt.
yeah, and then like with each trailer, I just find myself asking like, when's Andor coming out? Like I'm actually like really hyped to see this movie or
Yeah.
TV show.
Well, I didn't really get hyped about it by any of the stuff that Disney's put out except this most recent trailer. The stuff that was getting me hyped was a little bit of like the behind the scenes,
Mm,
people starting to hear like maybe it isn't really focusing on the character of Cassian Andor. Maybe it's, focusing more on this time period that's sort of like between episodes 3 and 4 and more closely to the end of episode 3, which is really cool to me because, as you know, like my favorite movie by far and maybe of all time, like definitely in the Star Wars universe, is Revenge of the
Revenge.
Sith. And when I saw the trailer that came out today and they're using the Phase 2 clone armor and not Stormtrooper armor, I was like, oh shit, like this is going to be really cool. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
I'm
Excited to see
just
what they
like
do.
everything's like working together for me. I think Tony Gilroy's a great showrunner. He's done some really good stuff on TV with The Americans. I think Diego Luna's a very talented actor who didn't get a ton to do in Rogue One, but shined when they gave him a few moments throughout. I like the look. I'm in on this show. Like I like this show has me, and now it's like you got to prove like my like trust in you is like true.
Yeah.
Because like I said, ObiWan I liked. I think I was a little bit more negative on it than I actually feel. I think overall I'm like, yeah, that was a decent 3 out of 4 stars for me. Nothing
Mhm.
like amazing, nothing terrible at all. Just a lot of like average middle. Where it's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, that was constantly good. It never got like very few moments got to great, very few moments got to bad.
It did feel like they played it safe a little bit.
They definitely did. I totally agree. But with that said, let's talk about a movie that does not play it safe. This is a 2 hour and 45 minute movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where for most of the movie, it's 2 characters talking
Yeah.
in Hollywood.
Yeah.
This movie is pretty cool. I'm just going to give some of the brief movie history on it. Josh, at any time, if you want to jump in, please do so.
Yeah, go
Like I
for
said,
it.
2019, it's classified as a comedy drama, which was already the first thing I was like, how would I define this movie? I don't know how you would define genre for this movie because I almost describe it as like hanging out. It's like a hangout movie. So I guess it like almost falls into like comedy. It's not
Mhm.
like particularly dramatic. So that was like a thing when I'm like, yeah, I don't know how you would classify this. I think the Golden Globes classified it as a comedy, but like, yeah. So with that, there was a lot of buzz about this movie pre-release. This was the first time Tarantino did not partner with the Weinstein brothers due to the Weinstein brothers' behaviors. So this is his first film where he is not working with Weinstein Company. So he basically auctions off like every studio. You have the chance to work with me. Like everyone throw what you got, and Sony ends up coming out the winner, and they basically tell Tarantino, we'll give you no notes, you get to choose how the trailer is edited, everything with this movie, it's your baby, it's your property, we will have nothing to do with it besides promote the movie the way you want us to distribute the movie, which is crazy to hand over not only like a huge budget of I think 100 million plus, and then also say marketing is basically yours to a guy that doesn't really have marketing experience. Tarantino obviously chooses the title Once Upon a Time to invoke the idea of a fairy tale. The two main characters of Rick and Clift are based on the actor Kurt Russell and his stunt double's relationship that Tarantino got to see on the set of the movie Death Proof. Did you ever hear the thing about the Sony leaks? Not the Sony leaks, the Miramax leak of The Hateful Eight.
No, I don't think so.
So what happened was, I think it's like 2014. The Hateful Eight is written, right? Tarantino writes The Hateful Eight. It's going to be releasing December of 2015. The whole script gets leaked by someone from the Weinstein Company. I don't know if they ever figured out who did it, but basically his whole script is leaked. The whole movie is out there. Pissed Tarantino off because he's very well known for being a very secretive director, wanting the audience to see it when he's ready to show it. So that was a huge reason for him just being dissatisfied with that. And of course, with the Weinstein's, what happened with them, it just leads to all this stuff. So he ends up going, it has this whole secret production about it. Brad Pitt talks about it in an interview that Tarantino only had one copy of the third act of the script that he would carry around in a briefcase. None of the actors got the chance to see it. When they were off set or when they were done shooting, Tarantino would literally shred all the copies. There was, I think, in total 3 scripts ever fully produced. And I think 2 of them were basically on Tarantino the whole time. And from my understanding, Pitt and DiCaprio got to trade off at times. And then, this movie ends up getting an all-star cast, including Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Emile Hirsch, Timothy Olyphant, Bruce Stern, Al Pacino, and then a bunch of actors who will become pretty big stars. Julia Butters, who was just the daughter in The Gray Man. Dakota Fanning's in here. Austin Butler, who just played Elvis this year. Kurt Russell's in here for a brief cameo. All of that. It's just a ton of actors who are going to get their start. Maya Hawke I believe she's on Stranger Things, Sydney Sweeney on Euphoria, Harley Quinn Smith, Rumor Willis, Mikey Madison from Scream, all these people. Josh, I really love this fact that I can't believe is true. These are people who are almost cast in this movie. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
So the character of Clint Booth, which is played by Brad Pitt, the studio, and it sounds like Tarantino had conversations with this actor. The original actor envisioned was Tom Cruise.
That's interesting. I think they casted it correctly. I don't think I would have gone with Tom Cruise there.
Yeah, I like the idea of Cruise being in a type of movie like this, seeing him do something very different. I think Brad Pitt is probably ultimately the right choice. This one I loved. I'm so sad this didn't happen. Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny was approached to play Charles Manson.
That actually would have been really good.
That would have been great. He ended up, because I think they ended up shrinking the role of Manson after Day said no. His whole thing was he's I don't think I'm a good enough actor to work in a Tarantino movie.
That might be true.
It might be true. I would have loved to see Charlie Day as Charles Manson. I love that idea. This one was one of my favorites. Macaulay Culkin, the kid from Home Alone, auditioned for the movie. It was his first audition in 8 years. And then I believe it was Bruce Willis revealed Jack Nicholson shot a scene for the movie that ended up being cut. Which is just do you know how baller you have to be if you're Tarantino to get Jack Nicholson, the first movie he's acted in since 2008, and delete his scene?
I'd love to hear an interview with Nicholson, kind of asking him what he thinks about that.
Yeah, I wonder who he was playing. I almost feel like he's the Bruce Stern character who's Spawn, who's in the bed the whole movie
Yeah,
for
I
just
could see
like
that.
5 minutes. Like that seems like the role. So maybe after Burt Reynolds died, who was the original actor to play that, maybe they're like, maybe we should have Nicholson, and then they're like, okay, let's actually have this guy come in.
Hmm.
But with that said, that's the movie history of this movie, so we can kind of actually get into it. We did this segment, Josh. I don't know if you remember. It's called "The Hill to Die On," which is
Hmm.
basically your big, bold, one sentence statement on this movie. So I'll do mine, and then you could jump in with yours.
Sure.
Mine's is Tarantino refers to this film as his magnum opus, and I totally understand why, because this is pure, unfiltered Tarantino in all the best ways possible. And if you
Hmm.
listen to him in any interview, you can just tell this is a guy where Hollywood is his bread and butter, and specifically the 1960s.
Hmm.
It's like the movie that you could clearly tell this is the movie and style that he's always wanted to make a movie in.
Hmm.
That's my thoughts on this movie.
Yeah, wait, but are you just saying that's what he thinks he thinks it's his magnum opus?
Oh, sorry. I forgot to add the last one. It's maybe not the best Tarantino film, but it's the one that I vibe with the most. Like, legitimately, like, this is the movie that I feel like I could rewatch the most out of all Tarantino movies. Even if I
Yeah.
don't think it's his best movie, it's just the one that's so easy for me to watch.
I think you could make an argument to say that it might be his best movie,
I
but
think you could too. For
it's
me,
mhm.
it's like the one that, like, when I was watching this movie, I just had it on the background because I had seen it multiple times,
Mhm.
and I just like found myself just like having a good time and not like thinking a ton about the movie. I was just able to have it on and enjoy it. And then when it is over, and it's like close to 3 hours,
Mhm.
I'm like, honestly, if the movie was 2 hours long, 2 hours longer, I probably would have been vibing with the movie the whole time. There was never a part of the movie to me that just feels slow. I'm just
Mhm.
like, I'm having a good time with this movie.
Yeah, I only really like maybe 3 of Tarantino's films, to be quite honest with you. I love Pulp Fiction, I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I like Django Unchained.
Oh, you're not an Inglorious guy?
It's okay. I like a lot of the scenes in it, but overall, I think it can be kinda slow at times.
That's fair. Yeah.
But as far as, like, a full movie goes, like, because you could make that argument about a lot of different movies that there are scenes in them that make them good, but as far as, like, a full movie goes, I really like those 3 movies that Quentin Tarantino's done, and between them, I'm not sure which one I would say is the best. It's
Hmm.
pretty hard for me to pick because 'cause they're so different.
Yeah. I think like the thing when I'm watching this movie
Mhm,
that like just kind of always shocks me is like, and it's the same thing Inglorious Bastards starts to do. There's actually in reality like 6 scenes in Inglorious Bastards because they're broken up into the acts within the film. So there's a few different settings. They go to different places and parts within those scenes, but it
mhm.
is really just like 6 set locations. And then
Yeah.
like this movie, it's like, okay, what if we just had like two, maybe three? And then the rest of them is just kind of vibing in a car going to another location.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up is what's so fun about this movie is, you know, I really like the little nuanced details that Tarantino throws in there. Like I like that there isn't really a soundtrack to the movie. It's just a lot of like car radio that you're listening to.
Mhm.
And it stops like immediately almost when they're getting out of their cars and stuff and it just feels really it feels like you're really in that world and in that time again. And sometimes I think you forget how big of a part of your life, like, you know, driving around is and just
Mhm.
listening to your music or listening to the radio or whatever. And that was probably a really, really big part of like the 60s and the 70s, you know, is just traveling around LA, listening to the radio. And I felt like he captured that really well.
You know what this movie weirdly reminds me of?
Hmm.
It's like playing Miami Vice, Grand Theft Auto Miami, or is it Miami City? Whatever that game's called. I think it's
Hmm.
Miami Vice, right?
I don't know, something like that.
It's whatever that Grand Theft Auto game where they're set in Miami,
Hmm.
because it's a lot of that video game is you just driving around in a really sweet car.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what this movie is for a lot of it. You hit on something right there. It's the production design of this. Tarantino's paying so close attention to matching the aesthetic of the 1960s Hollywood that he grew up in. It's
Mm-hmm.
so clear he has like just such a love and respect for this like entity
Yeah.
that like you hear the stories of him like working on the production design. Like he refuses to use CGI as much as possible. It's all practical. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about finding the old signs. It's all about recreating the old signs. It's all about recreating how the neon was lit,
Mm-hmm.
how the cars, the ads that would be on the doors, like all of it. It's like, no, this is going to be authentic to a T that if you were to just like travel there, you'd be like, this, oh, we're actually in 1969 LA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's the coolest part of the
absolutely.
movie.
And then the other thing that I heard too, I don't know if you heard that. You're a movie guy. You probably heard, their fake show that they made for it with
Bounty
uh
Law.
Bounty Law, that they apparently shot a full, I don't know if it was a full episode or like a couple episodes of it that are just full Bounty Law episodes.
Yeah, I mean that's such a Tarantino thing to do, and that's been something they've been talking about. Like they want to make a season of Bounty Law.
Yeah,
Like
I would
that
watch it.
Tarantino like wants to do.
Hmm.
Like I like I said, I love this whole thing. Like just some of my favorite aspects,
Hmm.
and I have a feeling we're gonna have a few of them. One, it's just let's just get it out of the way. The acting in this movie is like superb.
Yeah,
Like it's
it's really good.
top notch acting. I
Hmm.
think like Brad Pitt, I think, gets the more showy performance
Hmm.
in the movie. He is the guy that gets to have some of the big one liner laughs. He's the guy that just gets to kind of do the cool stuff at the end of the third act, where he's the one who gets to take down the Manson family.
Hmm.
He's really good in the movie. He looks really cool in the movie. He has, like I said, some of the best set pieces in the movie. DiCaprio's hilarious in this movie. Like so underrated funny in this movie.
Yeah, he's got some really good lines in it. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I liked a lot of the actors and actresses in it actually.
Yeah, he's just so like I it's the thing we don't get to see DiCaprio do a ton of. It's just comedy. It's
Hmm.
just natural comedic timing for this movie. The scene where he just breaks down in his trailer after he's like flubbed the one line,
Hmm.
it's one of the funniest scenes in the movie. Him just like ranting for 2 minutes, all improvised, by the way. That was something he completely improvised. And it's just so perfect. Like he's so in tune with this character
Hmm.
that it's just, it works on such a great level.
Yeah, that's my number 3 scene on my top 5 scenes from the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure I threw it on my list. It's just like, it's such a great one. And then, like, obviously with Tarantino, you're going to get the writing
Hmm.
throughout. The writing on this movie is funny, funny. Like, this is by far his funniest movie. He has just like Brad Pitt's delivery of that one line where he's just like, where he sees Austin Butler text when he's all drugged out. And he's like, I know you. You were on a horsey.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's bizarre stuff like that that just makes me laugh. The line where they go to spawn the ranch and he drops off the character Pussycat,
Hmm.
and the girl's like, "Oh, we sure love our pussy," and Brad Pitt, like with the biggest smile on his face, hamming it up, is like, "We sure do." It's all just like so great. Like it is just that. It's just so expertly funny,
Hmm.
but it
Yeah.
never feels like it's trying to be funny. It just is naturally funny.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely feels like they weave those jokes in like really naturally, and I think that's what makes it work so well. The humor that is.
Yeah, I. What's your favorite joke in the movie? If you like, can you recall?
Oh, I don't really remember a specific one to be honest with you. I'm
That's
trying to
fair.
think.
The whole scene where Brad Pitt is on like shrooms
Hmm.
is like just. It's not really a joke. It's just kind of perfect, just like comedy throughout. The flamethrower gag is really well done
Hmm.
at the end. Yeah, the scene where DiCaprio just starts crying after the Julia Butters character of Meryl just says that's the best acting I've ever seen.
Hmm.
It's all works so perfectly. Yeah, there's a lot of aspects of this movie I think that is really well done. And like I think there's also like this secret, like sentimental thing that Tarantino's doing with this movie is he's talking about a pretty like crazy subject with the Manson murders,
Mm-hmm.
where like Sharon Tate actually gets killed. I think like 14 people end up getting murdered in like the span of 2 weeks because Manson's like brainwashed all these hippies to kill people. Like that's like a real thing that happens. And like Sharon Tate is now remembered as like the first victim of the Manson family.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's doing in this movie is he wants to remember Sharon Tate, but not for the murders, but just kind of as a young, beautiful actress who's just like living her life. It's because it's interesting because now, like when I think of when I think of Sharon Tate, I usually think of Margot Robbie's portrayal of her, less so the actual murder of Sharon Tate. I think that's something he's actually really trying to accomplish because a lot of this movie, and I think a lot of the criticism when people first saw this movie was like, Margot Robbie like doesn't really have a huge role in this movie, and it doesn't feel like any of her scenes are like particularly impactful. And I would argue like her existing is kind of the impact of the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's my hill to die on is I actually don't feel like the whole that piece of the story really needs to be there. Like I don't necessarily feel like Margot Robbie is a very important character in the movie. I know that I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, like Quentin Tarantino's point of her is like to just really expose like how good Margot or how good Sharon Tate was as a person based on the people around her that spoke about her and spoke very highly about her bubbly personality and everything like that. And that he really wanted to draw attention to that side of her instead of associating her with the murder, like you said. Um, that said, I think it falls a little bit flat in my opinion. Like
Mm,
you're talking about something that happened in what, like the early 70s
1969.
or yeah, late 60s. Like, a lot of the people that are going to be going to the movies these days in their 40s are not going to really have a memory of that. They wouldn't have even been alive at that time, let alone, know what that is. So like just to be completely honest with you, like when we went to go see the movie for the first time, I came out of the theater a little bit confused at the ending because I wasn't really familiar. I mean, I'd heard of the Manson murders, but I didn't really know the story of it. And I have a feeling that that's probably how a lot of people felt leaving the theater.
I think that's a very fair point. For me, the Tate stuff works better with every viewing of the
Mhm.
movie because I
Yeah.
understand Tarantino's like intent. I also think this is the weird thing of context with the movie
Mhm.
where I feel like we don't know it because we're not in LA. I feel like anyone who lives in Hollywood, the Manson murders probably rings more true. It's more of an urban like story for them to tell. Urban, not myth, but it's like it's that tale they always tell, like, oh, that's where Manson killed that person. Like, oh, up the hills, that's where the Manson like family Spawn Ranch, that's just like right down there,
Mhm.
like all that. So I think there's a little bit more impact, definitely the more familiar you are with the Manson. And specifically, I feel like if you're in Hollywood, that story's better known. I
Mhm.
think also like the thing about it that I like, and it's again something that I've seen on second viewings. This movie's almost Tarantino's like thesis statement on the changing of Hollywood.
Mhm.
It's like this one singular event which he kind of surmises that like this is the end of Hollywood. It changes the public's perception on Hollywood. It makes everyone more cynical. I mean, the films of the 1970s where you have guys like Scorsese coming out, and you just have them making much more gritty, just raw films in
Mhm.
response to the 60s, which were so bright in its movies that like it marks this change. And I mean, like the impact can't be like stated. Like Roman Polanski is one of the most controversial figures of all time in Hollywood due to the fact that like I think he like kidnaps and rapes like a 12-year-old girl, and
Hmm.
like he evades the law, and he's like still hiding out in like Europe. They can't grab him in the US. He has like uh what's it? It's like sanctions over there where he's protected by custodies, like all this stuff. Like he's been evading Hollywood since like 1981 or something like that.
Hmm.
Like, and Polanski's the one who's married to Sharon Tate.
Hmm.
And like by all accounts, after her murder and like the fact that she's pregnant with his kid, like he goes just full off the rail.
Mhm.
Like, I think this movie, what he's saying is like, this is like, it's his revisionist history on like, we would have had these stars, we would have had these actors, we would have had this golden age of Hollywood, which I love so much,
Mhm.
if this didn't happen, if the Manson murders did not happen. So that kind of is him like killing them off. And it's also a weird thing that this movie does. He's also like commenting on what it means to be a movie star just like today.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much of this movie where it's like he gets like three of the few movie stars left in Hollywood. I wouldn't say there's a ton of movie stars left. Like true people who like are selling tickets solely by their name. There's
Mhm.
some like movie franchises that do that, but there's very few actors who it's like this guy is a certified hit whenever we put him in a movie.
Mhm.
And like that's a lot of this movie is him like commenting like the fadingness of a movie star. Just out of curiosity, like who do you think are like the last few movie stars like left in Hollywood?
Do you mean, like, from, like, the last generation, or you
No,
mean,
like
like, the guys
currently
that are
we're
right now big?
currently where we are in. Who would you call like movie stars? Like people who, if they make a movie, people are gonna come out to see them in pretty big numbers for the most part.
I think the first name that comes to mind, and this is definitely true, is Dwayne Johnson.
I think The Rock's a movie star.
I think he's a huge movie star.
I think he's one of the few. I think Tom Cruise is probably still on that list. I think like the fact that Top Gun Maverick is at like $1.4 billion
Yeah.
is kind of testament to like Tom Cruise's movie star. I'd
Mhm.
probably say DiCaprio, Brad
Mhm.
Pitt are probably both on this list. I'd probably say Margot Robbie makes a good case for being on that list.
Yeah, you could
Like
probably throw on there.
besides that, I mean, you have actors who are big. Like Robert Downey Jr. is a huge actor.
Mhm.
Like I wouldn't necessarily, none of his movies outside of the MCU have done like bonkers numbers. Like I guess Sherlock
Yeah.
Holmes did, but those were like a decade ago.
Yeah, and then you also kinda have, like, the weird, like, comedy side of, like, stardom too, where it's
Mhm.
like, okay, you know,
That's a fair point.
there's, like, you could throw, like, maybe Seth Rogen's in there, and you're like, "Okay, wow, a Seth Rogen movie, I'll go check that out," because he's got, like, his own audience, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Like comedy, actually, there are a few left. Like you'd probably say Rogan. You'd probably say Ryan Reynolds could probably open a
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Like,
You could
but
say
like,
Kevin Hart.
yeah, Kevin Hart. But like, I mean, if you're like thinking about like the golden age or even the 1970s of Hollywood, like
Mhm,
these guys are abundant. There's
mhm.
like 20 actors who each film they make is like a huge event.
Well, it's a
And
different time, it's back when the old media was sort of like, the mass media, right? Where they had
mhm,
TV, you had a few channels on TV, you had movies at the cinema or whatever, and then you had radio and newspaper, and that was pretty much it.
mhm.
So, being a lead in a movie was a much bigger deal than it is today. There's so many different outlets for people to find success in today moderately, where I think it sort of washes out the significance of a lead role in a movie.
Yeah, that's definitely actually a really good point because I think you're right for the most part. Like there are just more avenues. I think the thing that always shocks me when going back to the 1960s and 1970s are seeing the movies that were like making bonkers like box office. Like that was the number one film of that year. Like
Mhm,
Rosemary Baby was like the biggest film in the world. Like The Exorcist in like 1972, like The Great Escape, like all these movies where you're just like these movies like if they're made today,
mhm,
they're not one on that scale. They're not having that budget. They're not usually having a ton of the biggest actors in the world. Like you're not
mhm,
going to have like a Newman or Redford or any of these guys like just popping up or a Steve McQueen. You'll have
mhm.
like some actors, but they're usually up and coming or they're like very specific like type of actors. But
Yeah,
like I think that's the craziest thing when I go back and I'm just like, oh yeah, like back in like 1967, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Child can just be the biggest movie in the world.
mhm.
And like that would never happen today because it's so genre slash uh IP driven,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
I think the cool thing about Tarantino. He's one of the few guys who like isn't that. Like, he's one of
Mhm.
the few guys that can open up a huge movie, have people excited for it. Nolan's another guy. Nolan's like another guy who can just like open up a movie, and he really doesn't have to work in genre or not in IP anymore. Like, obviously he did The Dark Knight, but I mean, post Dark Knight, he's been very clear, like, he just wants to make whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, and I think that there's like some good and some bad that comes with that. I think the good is pretty clear, and we've
Yeah.
already talked a lot about that. It's the freedom to make a project that can be successful without pandering, if you will, to the general audience. So I think that that in itself is special, and kind of does it warrants a level of appreciation just in and of itself. I think maybe what might be the biggest downfall of having that freedom is this like sort of air of pretentiousness that comes with some of the films that those directors begin to uh, shine through in some of their work. I think that um, with this movie in particular, maybe it would have been good to we can both agree, I think, that Tarantino doesn't hold your hand for a second in this movie. The plot is loose. It's hard to follow for someone that doesn't know the backstory of
Yeah, there's not really a
everything.
plot. It's
Exactly.
like the thing
Well,
with this movie.
the thing is the plot is sort of the legend, like you're talking about the story around Hollywood of the Manson murders and the Sharon Tate, all these different stories that have come together that I think you sort of have to have an understanding of to follow what Tarantino is trying to do. And and I think I would have appreciated maybe, don't hold my whole hand, but, at least let me grab onto your pinky. You know what I mean? Like,
I
give me a line just telling me, like, something about, why you're going in this direction before
it,
you run off.
it's the weird thing that I mentioned earlier with the fact that like Charlie Day was supposed to play Manson, and it sounds like Manson had a much bigger role
Hmm.
because he's only in one scene. He is in that one scene where he goes to the house that eventually Sharon Tate gets murdered in real life at,
Right.
like, to kind of scope it out. And you're just like, actually, had Manson just been in like one or more, two more scenes, like talking to the girls
Hmm.
or like just talking to everyone at Spawn Ranch, it might have worked a little bit more cohesive. Like, just a
Yeah.
slight bit more if you had Manson to give the context of who Manson is. Because you're right. If you don't know the context of what Spawn Ranch is, I knew the context going in, so it wasn't hard for me to follow. But if you don't know it, it does. It's not the most self explanatory thing. Also, largely because like it is only two scenes. It really is the scene where Brad Pitt goes to Spawn Ranch,
Hmm.
and it's the scene where it all comes together at the end at
Right.
their house.
Yeah, I agree with you. Having Manson more as the glue of the story that kind of ties all these different pieces together, which it does feel like that's what Tarantino was trying to do. And maybe that's the one area that fell a little bit flat to me is like he's trying to tie these pieces together at the end. And like you said, one or two more scenes with that Charles Manson character kind of setting this all up would have been pretty helpful, I think, to kind of centralize the story a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I agree for the most part. Like I said, for me, it's not an issue because I
Hmm.
know it, so it's like hard for me to like say like, oh, more Manson stuff would have worked. But I think for the general like understanding of this film, because I think as time goes on, and that's going to be a weird thing about rewatching this movie as time goes on. Like,
Hmm.
if I ever show this to my kids in like 20, 25 years, I really have to explain like who Manson is, slash, I mean, maybe I don't, like, maybe like it's just going to be like kind of like the Zodiac, where the Zodiac stays timeless. It feels like maybe it's like maybe there's going to be a huge like Manson resurgence, like Netflix show that like just puts him in like the huge lexicon again.
Who knows?
But like, for the most part, I really don't see like that aspect of the movie
Hmm.
aging particularly well, because it's not even like, I think the cult of Manson is maybe more famous than actually like the actual murders. Like, I feel like a lot of people know the murders of like even like the serial killer from Sacramento,
Hmm.
who was just captured, the golden, what is his name,
Golden State Killer or something like that.
Golden State Killer. And even like the Zodiac, like we know a little bit more of like, oh, these are where the victims were. Like, he did all this, like Zodiac did this whole thing with the newspaper. Golden State, I mean, us being in Sacramento, we know that one probably much more because it was literally like, dude, I drove past the house. Have you ever been to the neighborhood where they arrested him?
No, isn't it in like Citrus Heights though?
It's in Citrus Heights. So I drove there, dude. It's freaky.
Hmm.
Like, because it's just so normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I was with somebody and they're like, that's the house right there where he was like living in, and they're like, they weren't sure exactly what he had done in that house slash like how long. I don't remember how long he had lived in the house, but they're like, oh yeah, he just lives there, and like, you know, there's like kids like running across because it's just like this little like side like neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, that's creepy. Because I mean, it
Yeah.
literally looks like your old parents' house, like
Yeah.
it looks like the street you live on. Like it's just like it looks so mundane and normal
Yeah.
that you're just like, that's creepy. Just like because it's just like in the normalest of neighborhoods, you wouldn't suspect the house.
Yeah. Well, I bet whoever got, that house probably got a screaming deal.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever buy the house.
No, imagine living in that
I
house.
don't think I could live in the house. I wonder if the family still lives there because he has a daughter and granddaughter that
Hmm.
I thought he lived with.
I wonder how much they knew about him.
It sounds like the daughter was completely blindsided because she did an interview a little bit after his arrest, which I think was like 2018,
Hmm.
and she was like full on like just shocked in the interview. It wasn't her like you got the wrong guy. It's like I can't even believe like fathom what this is. Like my life is completely changed, like type thing. Like
Can you
it's
imagine if that was your own parent
yeah,
that was
like
the
the
Golden State
most
Killer?
famous killer in the world. Like not the most, but like probably top 3 like all time, especially in California.
Yeah.
Like in Sacramento, it's like
Hmm.
him and the Night Stalker and the Zodiac.
Yeah.
Like
But the thing is, like,
insane.
what's weird though is like, here's why it doesn't work for me in this
Mm,
movie. Okay, just going back to this,
yeah, yeah.
it's
Tangents.
like, well, here's the thing. It's like you say Zodiac or you say Ted Bundy or whatever the fuck, right? It's like
Mm.
I don't like that stuff. I don't like paying attention to that stuff. I don't really know the details of any of those stories. And to me, I'm fine with that. It's like I've heard of it. I kind of know the Zodiac had like some codes or something and that he's associated with Ted Cruz now, but like I don't really know
He is
anything about it.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah. But like but it's like what makes Once Upon a Time at Hollywood kind of weird is like to me you go into that movie you don't really know that that's what you're going into per se. You don't
I,
really know that it's like a Manson murder story.
they don't show it in the trailers. I knew it because I was hearing like what the movie was about. Like Tarantino like was talking like, oh yeah, like the Manson family is gonna be in there. Like I knew who Sharon Tate was, so when I heard Margot Robbie is cast as Sharon Tate, I'm like, oh, he's doing this, and knowing like what he does in Inglorious Bastards, where he literally like kills Hitler in that movie. Spoiler alert. Like I had like an idea, but you're right. If you don't have that context and idea, I don't the movie can feel like a little off. And it's like cuz there's so many things that go into it. Like if I'm correct, I believe Charles Manson like the character cuz the actor who plays Charles Manson in this movie, I'm blanking on the actor's name. He's also the actor that plays Charles Manson in the TV show Mindhunter, which is David Fincher's like Netflix TV show.
Mm,
I think was on for 2 or 3 seasons.
mm.
So they had done like the whole explanation of who Manson is. So I almost feel like maybe it was like Tarantino being like, I don't just like want to copy and paste like maybe the general public is like knows enough because Mindhunter was pretty big when it came out. Like maybe it was him like just assuming stuff. I agree. It doesn't fully connect, and it doesn't fully connect if you don't know what it is. So I'll be interested to see how it ages. I just
Yeah.
don't have an issue with it because I know the history.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it does a bad job at presenting itself to someone that hasn't yet watched the movie. Like, if you're just going on Netflix or something, right, and you come across Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, for example,
Mm.
I don't think that the plot synopsis is going to give you clues that this is about the Manson murders. And I don't think that the way that they marketed the movie had anything to do with the Manson murders. They highlight the glory of the 60s and the Hollywood and the lights and everything that surrounds it. And they really play up the Brad Pitt and the Leonardo DiCaprio parts of it. but it's not like they're going into it saying, this is a story about the Manson murders and you need to kind of know that. You know what I mean?
They
Like,
don't
that's the
ever
problem.
like explicitly say it. They do say Margot Robbie is playing Sharon Tate. Like in the like they do say the name Sharon Tate in the trailer, and they do show the actor who plays Charles Manson.
Yeah.
So it is like kind of that like mixed thing where it's just like it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
I could you've gone more with the Manson? Perhaps. I don't necessarily think I need it, but I also understand like if I didn't know that, it's definitely frustrating.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's like the overall thing. I'm kind of the less is more approach to it, but I also understand why you need it because Inglorious does it kind of the opposite, where it's like, okay, like we're establishing the fact that like Hitler is right there,
Hmm.
and then when Hitler gets blown up in a movie theater, everyone in the audience knows like this is revisionist history because we know Hitler doesn't die like that. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, is Tarantino like basing a story off like World War II story like that he had heard, or is this like a real thing, or like is
Right.
this just like a fictionalized thing? Like setting it and killing like Hitler, who everyone knows is like a very broad way to tell everyone in the audience like this is the movie you're now getting,
Yeah. But I think it's a
and
little
this movie
different
doesn't
though.
have that.
It's different because everybody knows Hitler.
Yeah, you're right.
Everybody.
You're
And
right.
I don't think that everybody knows Charles Manson, and especially I don't think everybody knows Sharon Tate.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you are totally right on all of that because that was also one of my notes. I said that the film can feel meandering because it does like pay specific attention to this friendship, and
Mhm.
then the Spawn Ranch stuff is just in there. I like that it's just in there and it's just kind of in the background because it makes it feel a little ominous.
Mhm.
But like it is just like the thing about this movie is there's no like cohesive story necessarily. It is
Yeah.
just a bunch of people hanging out,
And I
and then
don't
it just
I
so
don't mind
happens to
that.
end it. No, I
I don't
agree. I
mind that at
I
all.
really like that. It's
Mhm.
just like for everybody, it's not going to be their vibe. There are
Mhm.
people who are going to watch this movie and think this is 2 hours and 45 minutes of pure sludge.
Mhm.
This was a rough movie to sit through. Uh, that was, geez, that was just our brief review of the movie. We have a few categories to go into. MVP of the film.
I think it's
Uh,
easy.
okay, I have a few nominees, and let me see of all the ones. I have to assume one of them's on your list. My nominees were Leonardo DiCaprio,
Sure.
Brad Pitt, Quentin Tarantino, cinematographer Robert Richardson, and Margot Robbie.
Oh, I didn't know you could consider, like, director and all that,
I
but
do
I
just
was just
for
thinking actors or
yeah,
actresses.
I do an MVP performer and then MVP of the film.
Mhm.
And I just didn't see a reason on doing performer because it's like, well, it's probably Pitt because he's the one who actually wins the statue.
That's who I said.
But I think it's also the thing is I think Pitt's also just the MVP of the film.
That's what I mean, I just think he's the one that kinda carries it.
I think so too. I mean, like, I think everyone works really well in this movie. And like I said, I already gave my praise for DiCaprio and Robbie.
Mhm.
Pitt's like, it's almost weird that he gets like the supporting actor award at the Academy Awards
Mhm.
because he's like almost just as he's in the film. I would say just as much as DiCaprio is. Like maybe DiCaprio's in a few more minutes, but it's pretty co-lead.
It's weird because, when I'm thinking about it in my head, I remember more of Brad
Pitt,
Pitt's
right?
scenes.
I have the same thing where I'm just like, yeah, I guess like DiCaprio is in the film more. Pitt's like in the biggest scenes in the movie, and Pitt's like the whole story revolves around Pitt,
Yeah.
and it's just great. Rookie sensation. So I almost named this the Keegan Murray Rookie Sensation Award. This is for the actor that when they're in this movie, they don't have like they're not the biggest star in the world. No one really knows who they are, and then like a year or two later, people know who they are. They're legitimate big actors. I had a few nominees. I had Julia Butters, who plays Meryl in Bounty Law. She's a little girl. She
Mhm.
just appeared in The Gray Man with Gosling and Chris Evans. God,
Yeah.
did you see that
Well,
movie?
no, I didn't, but I did no, no, I didn't.
It's
But
not very good.
the that's what I heard. But I remember the little girl from the movie being really, really talented.
Yeah. So she's on the list. Austin Butler is Tex. Tex is the main guy in the end scene. He's the one on the horse on Spawn Ranch, and then he gets killed by Pitt at the end of the movie.
Yep.
He then, of course, plays Elvis recently. Sydney Sweeney is just a character named Snake, who's one of the girls just randomly on Spawn Ranch when they all go visit there. She ends up being one of the main characters to come out of Euphoria, which comes out, I think, 2 months after this movie. So she has it. Mikey Madison as Sadie, who I already mentioned. She's the girl from Screen. And then Maya Hawke plays Flower Child again, just one of the other girls. She's in Stranger Things. I felt like the answer was pretty simple for me. I did say Austin Butler as Tex. I think that would be my vote. I mean, it's really between him and like Julia Butters as the little girl.
Yeah, I can't
both...
really imagine what the guy on the horse looks like, but I remember seeing the movie kind of recently and being like, oh, I recognize him, and he's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, he has the line at the end of the movie where he's like, I am the devil and I'm here to do the devil's business. And he's like, no, it was something much stupider than that. Yeah. The reason I chose Austin Butler was more of the idea of like, he's like one of the biggest actors post Elvis that was just like, oh yeah, he is in this movie for like just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like acting alongside Brad Pitt and DiCaprio and holding his own pretty convincingly. Like, it's pretty cool for an actor to do. Let's go jump into the next segment. In a nutshell, 2019. We already talked about the Manson stuff. We don't need to get into any of that. We already talked about a movie stuff. We already talked about the movie star stuff. If there's any movie stars just left, which then kind of just leads us into the 2019 like Academy Awards, which I did the list for you, so you didn't have to look it up at all.
Nice.
2019 is actually legitimately a pretty crazy year for movies. Like, that award season is stacked. You have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood gets nominated for 10 Academy nominations, wins 2. It's second only to Joker, which just somehow got 11 that year, which is a pretty crazy number for Joker to have got. And then it ties The Irishman in 1917, which are also that same year. The same year as Jojo Rabbit, and the same year as the Parasite year, where Parasite wins Best Picture.
And Rise of Skywalker.
And Rise of Skywalker. And Avengers Endgame, in fairness.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
like,
actually,
it's a pretty crazy movie. So here's the nominations for that year for Best Picture. Parasite ends up winning, but you also have Ford versus Ferrari.
That's a great
The
movie.
Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Woman, Marriage Story, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Wow.
That's a crazy lineup. Like, those are legitimately all movies that I gave positive reviews to. Like, I legitimately like 10 of those movies to 9 of those movies to varying degrees.
Did cinematography go to 1917?
Yes.
Good. I think that's right.
Yeah, I know you're a much bigger fan of 1917 than I am, but cinematography was like undeniable. It's obviously beats out Once Upon a Time, which I think had that movie not been nominated, I feel like Once Upon a Time probably takes that award pretty handily.
It's hard to say, but yeah.
I don't know. Ford versus Ferrari.
It's a beautiful film.
Yeah, and then like the cinematography in Joker is actually like surprisingly really good.
Yeah.
Parasite looks gorgeous. And then like,
I don't know if you can give it to Once Upon a Time.
I don't know if you could. It's actually like, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's like Irishman. The Irishman, like, it's just randomly just like a movie that's just in there.
Yeah, and that, speaking of cinematography, it looks great. That's a movie that looks really good.
Yeah, so it's just like, so let's just talk about the awards that it did win. Pitt beats out Tom Hanks for his performance as Mr. Rogers in A Beautiful Day.
That's fine.
Who's also nominated. Anthony Hopkins he beats out for the movie Two Popes. Al Pacino for The Irishman, and Joe Pesci for The Irishman. So just like, that list is crazy to me because it's Brad Pitt, Tom Hanks, Anthony Hopkins, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci. Like 5 of the hugest actors of all time, like in one category that year.
Yeah, I saw all those movies. That was a big year for me.
Wait, did you actually see The Two Popes?
Yeah, I like that movie a lot.
I never saw that movie. That was like the one movie from that year that I legitimately missed, and I've meant to see it.
It's a good movie.
Is he good in it?
He's really good in it, and so is the other Pope. I forget his name.
Yeah, I forgot. Reese something.
It's really politically driven, which kind of ruins the movie a little bit because there's clearly, just as a small tangent here,
Mhm.
there's clearly a bias that you can feel. And I'm not Catholic, but there is a bias that you feel that like the more liberal, if you want to say, or like more progressive,
Mhm.
uh, what do you call him? Pope is they show a lot of favor for
Because
him in the movie.
is this movie the transition from the previous pope that we had to the new Pope Francis? Is that like what the movie's about, or is it like a satire, like based in its own fiction? Like I literally like don't know anything about the movie.
No, I don't think it's a satire. It's a historical kind of,
So the
uh
people in the are like the legit real popes, not
yeah.
obviously their actors portraying them, but it
Yeah,
is supposed to be based in reality.
I think it's like Pope Benedict the Fourth or something, and then
And
like
that's
Pope
Hopkins.
Francis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I've
And
been meaning
so
to see it. It's been on my list.
Hopkins plays like the older
Yeah,
Pope.
he plays, and then Reese plays the younger. So
Hmm.
does Pitt deserve it out of all five of those?
Yeah, I think so. I
I
think
think so too.
The Irishman stuff is like kind of interesting because I like Joe Pesci a lot, and
I
I'm
like
glad
Pesci
we
a
got him
lot in that.
back. But I don't think he was like
See, I think
amazing.
Al Pacino's better in The Irishman. I think like Pacino has maybe the more showier role in The Irishman,
Hmm.
but like I really like him as that character like in that movie. And then like the funny thing is like I also think Tom Hanks actually does a really good job as Mr. Rogers.
That's the
I
one
think
movie I actually haven't seen.
it's a good movie. It's not like anything like special, but I think Tom Hanks is like actually like making the movie magical. Like it's just kind of
Yeah,
that chart Tom Hanks charisma.
yeah, whatever.
Uh,
I don't know. I don't like Tom Hanks that much.
are you not a huge Hanks fan?
I think he's a great actor. I think he has zero range.
That's see, I feel like he's only range. I feel like he's only like drama and comedy, like in the
Well, I
sense of
just
like
feel like doesn't he always play like the role where he's like the good guy and super likable and stuff? Like that always bothered me. He never played like a villain or anything like that. And everyone says he's such a good actor.
he's done villains. He's done a handful. He did Road to Perdition, which he's like a villain, and then he just had a movie recently where he's the villain and he's really bad in it. Not
Exactly.
like bad in it, but it's just like the movie's bad. What was that movie? He did it. It's with John Boyega.
That
He's in it
sounds
for like
bad.
5 minutes.
I don't know.
The Circle. That's the movie. He's literally in it for like 2 minutes, and he's just playing Steve Jobs, and then he like leaves. It's a
Yeah,
weird movie.
I don't know. Yeah, that's just short tangent, but yeah, I wish he would have a little bit more range.
That's fair. Let's see. Production design. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does win. Uh, so I think that's probably pretty well deserved production design, at least. I think like it's hard to argue that one. And
Mhm.
then the best picture, I mean, like, I don't think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood actually had a chance. Like, that's a pretty stacked year for this year.
Mhm.
Like, I think Parasite was actually undeniable. I think Parasite's probably the best movie that gets nominated this year. Like, you've seen Parasite, right?
Yeah, I like Parasite a lot.
Parasite's like pretty genius. Like, I don't think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood actually has a chance. And then the director's list is even crazier. It's Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Sam Mendes for 1917, Tarantino for Once Upon, and then of course just randomly Todd Phillips for The Joker. Which is just
Yeah.
like there's four really good like directors in there, and then like Joker, which is just like I feel like that movie's success is fully built on Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Talk
it's
about a
just
character or like a actor that I think would actually be pretty cool to play as like a Manson character. That would fit really well.
yeah, I mean he's just a creep in that movie.
Mhm.
But like I to me like the Todd Phillips direction one never made a ton of sense to me. I think that he's a good director in the movie. It's just like he seems out of his range with the other guys
Yeah, I
in that
agree.
movie. Uh let's move over to the next category, Mount Rushmore. You haven't gotten to play this game yet, but it's a game that I do. Basically, the idea is there's 4 spots on Mount Rushmore. Uh and I'm going to give you categories and you're going to tell me does it belong on the Mount Rushmore for this
Sure.
specific category. So the first one is this film on the Mount Rushmore of DiCaprio movies.
Oh, DiCaprio movies?
Yeah. So like, is this one of the 4 movies that you would define as a DiCaprio movie? I'll give you some of the names that I thought of: Titanic, The Revenant, Django Unchained, Wolf of Wall Street, Inception, The Departed, Blood Diamond, Aviator, Catch Me If You Can, Gangs of New York, Gilbert Grape. This movie. Do you think it's on the 4? Do you think it's
No,
on
not at
Rushmore?
all. Not even close.
I would probably, I'd probably agree because Wolf of Wall Street would be on it.
Mm-hmm.
You'd probably have to give The Revenant because that's what he eventually wins.
Yeah. You got to put probably Titanic on there.
I
It's his
think you
most
have to put
iconic role.
Titanic, and then like The Departed, probably, right?
For me, I mean, yeah, The Departed is a great movie. I would still put that one over this for his role.
I
But
would
for me, it's Catch
probably.
Me If You Can.
Yeah, he's really good in that movie, and that's like the first time he really shows like he's a really talented actor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would agree. It probably wouldn't make it on the Mount Rushmore for best DiCaprio performances. What about Brad Pitt performances or
Maybe.
movies?
Maybe.
Here's the Brad Pitt's a weird one. He's such a famous actor, and he doesn't have a ton of huge movies.
Exactly. I
Like,
don't know. I think you put maybe you put Fury on that list. I
yeah,
don't know.
here I have the list of some of them: Fury, Inglorious Bastards, Seven, Fight Club, Benjamin Button, Moneyball, The Assassination of Jesse James, Ocean's 11, 12 Monkeys, Thelma and Louise.
Ooh,
Like,
it's closer. I think this one's up there for him. I definitely put Fury on there. I
I think
definitely put Inglorious Bastards on that
I think
list,
Inglorious has to be on it.
and then Fight Club.
Fight Club has to be on it.
So then I don't know.
So there's 2. The weird thing for me is like I want to put Seven on there, but it's like not even like fully like Brad Pitt's movie, and he's really young in that movie. Like he's not fully there as an actor just yet.
I
But
think that's more of a Kevin Spacey
I
movie
would
than
all
it is
I'd
his.
call it more even a Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
Like
I
that's a
put both of them
Freeman,
over him.
like, yeah. And then Moneyball could be on there. I probably would put this movie on the uh Mount Rushmore for Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I think it has to. It's the one he wins his Oscar from. And but the thing is, like, out of the true Tarantino movies he does, I actually prefer him, and prefer is just like I love both of them. What's the one that I think he's giving a better performance? I think he's incredible in Inglorious Bastards.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's
So
really good in both. They're just very different roles. He's
yeah, so
supposed to be, much more like kinda reserved, kinda keeps to himself kind of a guy in most of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that's what to me what makes him more impressive as an actor in that movie because he allows so much emotion to come through and, he really propels Quentin Tarantino's story along without a whole lot of dialogue.
yeah, he has to be on that list for me too. Like the more I think about it, it's like I think you just have to put 2 Tarantino performances on Mount Rushmore
Yeah, you might be
for
right.
Brad Pitt.
Mhm.
Okay, is Once Upon a Time on the Mount Rushmore of best Tarantino finales? So third act finales.
What do you mean by finale?
Like this, it's the big final set piece of the movie. So, like for instance, Inglorious Bastards, like you have to put Inglorious Bastards on that Mount Rushmore. It's maybe
It's
the
tough.
most iconic like ending he's ever done.
It's tough to say because that's kind of what Tarantino's known for is like leaving these grandiose sort of finales for you to think about. And I think like just look at Django. I think Django has to be
Django
on
has
that
a
list.
great end. Django, I think Reservoir Dogs actually has a really great ending. Pulp
Yep.
Fiction, like tying it back to the beginning.
Yep.
This one is on there. Like hell, Kill Bill ends with killing Bill. Like
Yeah. But as
there's a
far as
lot of
like
really good
iconic,
ones.
if what you mean by, Mount Rushmore is like what are his most iconic finales?
What are the ones that are going to be remembered?
Yeah, I would say definitely I would think Reservoir Dogs is on that list.
I think Reservoir and Inglorious Bastards are like locks. Like
And
there's
I,
no
I
way
think
those
Django's
aren't
a
on there.
lock.
Jing, I
Because, I
like
mean,
the
if you
ending
think
of
about
Django a
that
lot.
whole shootout at the end of the movie and, like, just
Yeah, the
everything that
Samuel L.
goes on
Jackson
there.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably on there. And then it's the case of probably Pulp Fiction versus Once Upon a Time, which I think I prefer the Once Upon a Time ending,
I
but
prefer
it's
it
really
as
close.
well. I prefer it, but I don't know if it's more iconic yet. I think you
Yeah.
gotta wait for time to figure that out.
I'm gonna preemptively put it on the Mount Rushmore, but it's close.
Yeah, I
I think
personally put
that's
it
how
on
I
my
feel.
Mount Rushmore.
I think it would be on mine too. And then the last one for Mount Rushmore is Bounty Law, which is the show Rick Dalton is on.
Mm-hmm.
Is this on the Mount Rushmore of best fake TV shows where we'd actually watch them if they were real? I have a few other
Uh-huh.
nominees.
Okay.
I'd buy that for $1 from RoboCop. Honey, Where Are My Pants from the Lego Movie.
That's what I was gonna say.
I have The Night the Reindeer Died from the movie Scrooge. Just the Truman Show, the show that they're filming Jim Carrey on. The Running Man, which is very much like Hunger Games. Hunger Games. Ow
Mm-hmm.
My Balls from Idiocracy. And I got the shit kicked out of me from Sorry to Bother You. I think all those are possible nominees. So would you put Bounty Law on a show that you'd actually like watch if it was on TV like today?
I mean, yeah, like sometimes I'll watch Gunsmoke, so that's the same thing. And
That's
that's the
fair.
real show. So yeah, I
Yeah,
would watch it.
I think I would be on mine too. Like the that one and Honey, Where Are My Pants are probably just like undeniable. And then the Truman Show would actually be pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, I would
Like,
watch that.
and then like I guess if you're going like dystopia, I feel like the Hunger Games is actually pretty lame to watch on TV. It's a bunch
Yeah.
of people hiding in a tree
Yeah, yeah,
for like
definitely.
48 hours. I feel like The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like there's a guy with chainsaws chasing Schwarzenegger.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a little bit more exciting. Okay, with that Mount Rushmore category done, we're going to go to 5 movie scenes ranked. So I'll let you do your list
Okay.
and then I'll tell you if I have them on my list and where I have them.
Okay, so my number 5 is actually probably my favorite comedic moment. Maybe I don't know if I want to say that, but it's one of them. And it's that very brief scene where Cliff is on a boat with his wife nagging him.
I thought about it so much.
And
That was like
it's just implied that he
that he
kills her
kills
because
her.
he's holding the harpoon. It's such a great small scene that they just throw in there.
Yeah, because it's the scene. Because I almost like. I think the reason I like had trouble like defining the scene is because it's so interlude with the Bruce Lee scene,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like, do I put the whole scene on there, or is that one moment? Is that 2 separate moments?
I think it's 2 separate
So I
moments.
think it's 2 separate moments too. But like the whole thing is like, because then that joke really gets delivered when Bruce Lee is like, "Oh, how scary can this guy be?" And he's
Yeah,
like, "He killed his wife."
yeah.
And like Bruce Lee's like, "What?"
No, but that cutaway is so great because it's totally like Family Guy, right? It's just like
It's
a
so
cutaway, and it's just a joke that's implied, and the whole scene is just perfect.
there's a few scenes in this movies that is just cutaway jokes, like the scene where like Leonardo DiCaprio, Rick Dalton's talking about like, oh, like Cliff is my driver,
Mhm.
like he something like I'm doing him a favor or something like that, and then like Quentin Tarantino like comes in, voiceover, and he's like, "That's a fucking lie. He got his ID revoked, his driver's license revoked for drunk driving, and it shows
Mhm.
like him crash."
Yeah, those are the kind of scenes that I really, really like,
Yeah,
but my favorite of those scenes is definitely the one with him on his boat with
I
his
had it
nagging
like
wife.
it was like 6 and 7 because I had that one and I had the Bruce Lee scene, which is just like so funny.
Mhm. That one's on
Like
my list too.
that was on there. Okay, what's your next one?
So that is my number 4, which is the Bruce Lee fight.
Okay,
I
that
love
I
that
had.
scene.
Yeah, I had that one right off. I I think a lot of people were rubbed the wrong way when this scene came out because I think the reason it was largely was because the fact is this scene is in the trailer. Like you see Bruce Lee like attacking like Cliff, and I think everyone kind of thought Bruce Lee was gonna like be involved in the movie more, and
Mhm.
then he's like literally only in this one scene. So I
Mhm.
think people were one like just kind of disappointed with that. And I
Yeah.
just like I get it. The scene's also like really important to establishing who Cliff Booth is because one, it's like he beats the crap out of Bruce Lee,
Mhm.
and two, it's also like you can't actually tell if that happened. It's kind of implied like, oh, is this guy like kind of just bragging about something that happened, and it kind of makes this unreliable narrator where we're kind of unsure exactly what Cliff Booth is saying. It was
Mhm.
on my short list. It was like I had that both written down like in the short list I had. I'm like, those are both like in there. Which one actually makes my top 5?
Yeah, so that's my number 4 on the list. I love that scene a lot.
Okay, number
Kind of
3.
So my number 3, I think I already mentioned this, but it's when Rick Dalton gets mad at himself and just like locks himself in his
Yeah,
trailer.
that's
I
my
love
number
that
2.
scene.
I had that, the Rick Dalton on set, messing up his lines,
Hmm.
talking with Meryl, doing the scene, and then Meryl saying like, "That's the best acting I've ever seen."
Hmm.
That whole like just 20 minutes of DiCaprio just like literally just acting,
Hmm.
a different character acting on a TV show
Hmm.
is like perfect to me. I could watch that all day. And
To
just the
me,
mess up he has where he freaks out and he's like, I'm gonna kill myself. Like if you don't get this right, I'm gonna kill you tonight.
yeah, I love that whole part.
It's such a good freak out.
This is a little bit of a side note, but I was just thinking about this the other day, like how confusing it must be to be a production person on a set where some of the people in production are actually actors in the movie, but they're supposed to look like they're part of production,
Yeah.
because they're like filming production. So it's
Mm.
like, what do we like? You have a real camera that you're filming for the movie with another camera? And then, like, how do you know who's who? Who do you know? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah.
must be so confusing.
I had the whole, like I said, this whole scene was on there because like even that beginning scene, right? With where he's like hanging out with Meryl and she's
Mhm,
rehearsing her lines
mhm,
and she's like, I don't break character.
mhm,
And he's just like sitting there like feeling like emasculated because
mhm.
he's like just talking to her and like totally breaking character. And he's
Yeah,
like, oh crap. And because he's so self-conscious about the fact that he's not a real actor anymore.
mhm,
It's so great. It was my number 2. So what's your
yeah.
number 2 then?
My number 2 is and my number 2 and number 1 are kinda similar scenes, but
Mhm.
they're different moments, so I think they count as different scenes. My number 2 is Cliff taking drugs and,
Yeah.
with his dog and all of that when, the Manson people break into his house. I love that scene.
It is so great because that's my number 1. That is,
Mhm,
like, just straight up. I just have the Cliff beats up the Manson family
mhm,
because, like, for me, the scene starts when he's tripping Austin Butler. They all go into the house. He
mhm.
beats the crap out of them in just a violent fashion.
Yep.
Just and the scene, to me, the best scene in that moment isn't even the violence.
Mhm,
It's when Austin Butler's pointing the gun at him
mhm.
and he's so tripping on drugs that he points like a finger gun at him and just starts laughing. And then the scene where he gets like the knife in his like leg and he
Mhm.
just like kind of taps on it and just like kind of just amazed. Like it's so good.
Yeah, that whole scene is amazing. I
Yeah.
love it, and it's so, like, satisfying the way he just, like, kills all of them and everything.
Yeah, I
S
totally agree. It's my number 1 scene. It's
so
so I have a feeling your number 1 scene, I incorporated it with my number 1 scene,
yeah,
which I said is
exactly.
the beats up the Manson family. Is can I guess it?
Yeah, it's easy.
Is it the flamethrower scene where DiCaprio comes out with the flamethrower?
Yeah, I
It's the
mean,
best beat in the movie.
it's to me, it's a different scene because then you're going to sort of like a different moment,
No, you're
and,
right.
you're going back to the story of Leo again and, like, all that,
I kind of
and
fudged it, but you're right. It is kind of like 2 different scenes. I just
'cause
counted the whole Manson family 3rd act as 1.
yeah, yeah, I mean,
But
that's fair, I get it, but
it's so good.
mhm,
It's so funny because they set it up at the beginning where he's, like, talking to Pacino,
mhm.
like, "Oh, yeah, I have flamethrower experience."
And it's such a throwaway line, you think it's just another one of those, like, kinda cutaway gag things that they're doing that they do throughout the movie,
Yeah,
and then
"Burn
the
in
the
hell,
fact
Nazis!"
the fact that they, like, bring it back is so funny, and
And
it's like,
because
you
the
really don't expect it.
Because the best part is when we're in theaters, I remember, like, we're in theaters, she, like, falls in the pool, he,
Mhm.
like, scrambles out of the pool, and you just see him go off screen, and I think we all had that reaction, like, "Oh, we know what he's grabbing," and he
Yeah.
just comes out with, like, the epic music and just, like, burns
Mhm.
her.
It's so good.
It's really great.
Yeah.
So, we had a lot of the same moments.
Mhm.
I'll say some of mines. My number 5 was a scene that you did not have, which was Tate going to the movies. Again, I feel like it's the emotional crux of this movie, and the more I watch this movie and understand what Tarantino's going for, I think that scene's so important, and
Mhm.
I just think Robbie just kinda kills it. It's another one of these scenes where it's just a character watching themselves on screen, and I think
Yeah.
it's really satisfying. My number 4 is that same premise done even better,
Mhm.
which is the scene where Clifton Rick Dalton are just watching the episode of FBI together on the TV.
That's a good moment.
That is a great moment. The sound design's so great because it's like feels like it's coming from behind you. It's just really clever. Number 3 for me was Cliff at Spawn Ranch, which is the scene where he drops off Pussycat and like hangs out, and then like the guy flattens his tire with a knife, and then he just like beats the living crap out of him.
Yeah, such a good scene.
Yeah. That one. And then like I said, we had 2 and 1, which was Rick Dalton on set messing up his lines. And then my number 1 was Cliff beating up the Manson family. Movie legacy. It's almost like impossible to talk about the legacy of this film just now because it is so recent.
Yeah.
That's just like, I think it's a good movie, and I think people are going to like it and rewatch it. I don't know how much it's actually like legacy wise, like in 10 years, how well regarded is this movie. I would guess pretty well respected. Don't know if it will actually like it's impossible to know how a movie actually stays with the lexicon. I think the thing that does keep it in the lexicon, this movie had a ton of memes, like meme templates. Like you have the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing right after the movie. You had the I mean, I know you and I for like a year, that was like the one joke whenever Chris would make a mistake and he just like tried defending himself.
Yeah, I love that.
It's so great. There's like a bunch of those scenes. I think, isn't there? I want to say there's a few others that just ended up being meme templates. So actually, in reality, what's going to keep this movie alive is probably the memes. People are going to know the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing. So yeah, but besides that, that's all my real thoughts on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we have a category called movie pairings, which is the idea of like, if you like this movie, these are other movies that would be like a good companion piece with them. They're broken down into 3 categories: cast and crew, genre, and wild card. So I'll ask you, and I can start. For cast and crew, what would be like the movie from someone from the cast or crew that you would like recommend? If you like this movie, you'd probably like this movie as well.
Well, I mean, it would be pretty easy to throw out another Quentin Tarantino movie as a
and it's what I
recommendation.
did. I did Tarantino.
Like, this is the most Tarantino movie maybe that he's ever done. So if you like it, then you'll like other Tarantino movies.
Yeah, and I chose one specifically, and I was like trying to think like which one was the one, like if you like the ideas of what this movie is doing, which one would work really well for you. And I think Inglourious is the right answer.
Yeah,
I think it's The Bastards. Because it does have a little bit of this, like, I wouldn't call it a hangout film. It's definitely not, but it is like, it is just 6 scenes broken up that you don't fully realize how they come together until they all end up in the theater in the final act.
Yeah, I think you could also maybe put The Departed on that, because I think it's kind of similar in that way, where it's like, yeah, these are some different guys, and they're, you just don't know how it's going to come together in the end, and it's very shocking, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio, so I would probably recommend that one too.
I think that's a fair one. For genre, I had the movie that came out last year, which I've told you to watch. I don't know if you actually ever did watch it. It was Licorice Pizza.
No.
It's the movie with Alana Haim, Philip Seymour Hoffman's kid, Cooper Hoffman, and Bradley Cooper. It's the exact same type of premise as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is Paul Thomas Anderson looking back at the 1970s LA for the good and the bad. And it's again the same thing. Not a ton of story. You are just hanging out with these characters. There's some just outrageous performances. Bradley Cooper just comes into the movie for like 20 minutes and just steals the movie for just like this segment that doesn't really feel attached to anything in the movie, but I love the segment. Same with Sean Penn. He's just randomly in the movie for like 10 minutes. And again, it's like nothing really ties together. It deals with this idea of like what LA is, what we have our nostalgia for, whether the 1960s or 1970s, whether we view them in such rosy eyes because we remember it. And then in reality, once you strip the nostalgia back, like, oh, this is the dark underbelly of LA that allows basically a 20-year-old to be hit on by like a 6-year-old movie star and sexually harassed at times. It's a really damn good movie. I really like that one. Do you have one in genre that you feel like is similar? Or even just like, not even genre, just like similar tone or feel to this movie?
For me, I think the movie that I think of is Hugo, because not necessarily the feel of like the 60s, 70s, but
Yeah.
just the idea that like, this movie is clearly like a love letter to Hollywood
Mm.
and cinema, and just sort of like the evolution of cinema through the years, and watching how things change from one era to another. And I think that in a lot of ways Hugo is that same idea, but used maybe more from like the 10s and 20s to
Yeah.
the 30s and 40s, and recognizing kind of like how the difference in era affects people, and also it's another love letter to some of the pioneers of cinema as well. So I think it's
Yeah.
it's different, but it's
Mm.
same in a lot of ways too.
I had for my wild card it was Hugo. I wrote
Mm,
Hugo as mine because I thought it was like it is Scorsese's love letter to the films that he grew up in and loves.
mhm.
Like that's the stuff he treasures. Same way Tarantino, this is his love letter to 60s, which he talks about very often in his interviews. Scorsese is like talking about the guys he grew up in and learned from. Like, so I
Yeah.
agree. I That was mine for wild card. So do you have one for wild card? And this wild card literally means however you want to associate it with this movie. It's up to you.
Uh, I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't know
hard
what
one.
this is.
I
Maybe
had
maybe maybe Boyhood, as far as just like literally no direction for it besides just following the life of someone, and it's just kind of like,
I like that a
this is
lot
the
actually.
story of that. So,
Boy, that's a really good answer. That's a I really like, and it's a really good movie.
mhm. A lot of people
That
don't like that movie.
it's weird to me. I get that the movie's like really slow.
Mhm.
I really like that movie. With that said, we are done. We have our last segment for the show, which Josh, if you want to take off your earphones real quick so I don't deafen you, or just be aware I'm going to go really loud. Welcome to the Great Debate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debate. You know how this works. We have a question planned out. We're going to discuss what we think the best answer is, and we will see who has the better answer. Josh, I sent you the question. I will read it again in case you don't remember it. Who is the actor slash actress that you would want to see Tarantino pair up with? And I said, come up with three.
So am I supposed to just tell you 3?
Yeah, tell me three and why.
Well, I don't some of them that I might throw out there, I'm not sure if they've been in a Tarantino movie, because I don't think I've seen all of his
Mm,
movies, but, um, while he's still, before he gets too crusty, I'd like maybe Tarantino to do a movie with Harrison Ford. It just seems like that would pair really well.
yeah, it's a good. I like that. And he has not done a movie with him.
It's just really like kind of a gruff guy. Seems like Harrison would wanna do a movie a little bit more like that,
And
and,
Harrison can be really funny.
yeah, he can be funny.
Like he's a funny guy.
He has kind of that suave that Brad Pitt but does. So maybe Tarantino could use them interchangeably. I don't know. I mean, obviously, like Harrison Ford is fat and like in his 70s, but
Eight, is
it's
he in his
similar.
80s now?
He
He's
might be
in.
in his 80s. He's
Might
old.
have. If he's not, I think by the time Indiana Jones 5 comes out in theaters, I think he turns 80.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I agree. It's also the same like thing. Like, uh, he is legit and he's a superstar, and we know
Mhm.
Tarantino likes working with superstars.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Who are your other two?
What's the girl's name that's in Queen's Gambit? It's Anya
Oh, Anya
Taylor
Taylor
Joy.
Joy.
I think she'd be a really
She's
good
the one in the
person.
Northman, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
she's really good in that. And by the way, somehow she becomes hot in that.
yeah, she's really beautiful.
Yeah, what
She's. I've
happened?
always told you that.
Yeah,
Did you
but
not
she's
see?
got
Oh, you did not see Last Night in Soho.
no, I haven't, but she's got like these really far apart eyes that make you think that like maybe she's not going to be that attractive. She's definitely not in Queen's Gambit, but she was pretty attractive in Northman.
Yeah, that's the 1970s effect of everything. No one's attractive in the 1970s.
I mean,
But
Sharon Tate was.
that's fair. But yeah,
Well,
I guess that's fair.
1969 she died, so I guess maybe not.
Yeah, like this is the 1970s. I mean, our biggest movie stars were Paul Newman, but
Yeah,
like, and Marlon Brando.
yeah, that's a good point.
Uh, that's a good pick. I hadn't thought of her. She's actually a pretty good pick. Who's your last pick?
All right, I really think this is a great pick. I think it. I'd like to see him for sure as part of a Tarantino film. I think you got to throw Shia LaBeouf in there.
He is interesting. Shia's in like a weird stage in his career right now.
Here's the
He's
thing. Shia would do it.
well, of course Shia would do it. I don't know if Tarantino would take on Shia right now.
Why not?
Have you not heard like the past 3 years of controversy with Shia LaBeouf? His is like pretty shocking. His story just like keeps getting like somehow worse. He's like the Ezra Miller, where every time you like read Shia LaBeouf in a headline, you're like, oh, this is not going to end well. There's never just like Shia LaBeouf adopts 100 puppies.
Yeah, that's
It's
fair.
always Shia LaBeouf caught for murder.
Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, like he likes
He's a
weird
great
movies.
actor. He is a great actor. Like just legitimately, he is a fantastic actor. He's a guy that just cannot get out of his own way.
Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah.
Holes.
Yeah, he's legitimately like a great actor. I just wish he could like actually sober up and like get help.
Yeah, but I feel like
He's
if he
like,
sobers up, like maybe he wouldn't be fit for a Quentin Tarantino film.
it might be fair. Okay, so my 3 was I had Adam Driver. It seems like the easy answer, but it's Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Like he could work in any movie and
Yeah.
he could work with any director, and he's worked with like all of them at this point. Like how is like put him with Tarantino. As my number 2, I had Nicolas Cage. Just seems like an easy natural pairing. Like there's such an eccentricity to everything Cage does, but it's so not performative, but it's so meticulous. Cage like doesn't just like he does the most random things. He doesn't do it just to be random. He has like a whole like 10-page essay on every decision he makes in a movie. And I think that could just work really well with Tarantino.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the third one I had 2. The first one was a little bit more of the standard pick, which was Tom Cruise, which is like movie star. He was already looked at in this role. It'd be kind of cool to see him. The second one was a guy who was also considered for another Tarantino movie. And speaking of a guy who maybe needs some career rehab, Will Smith has had a really weird 2022.
Will Smith.
Will Smith has said he was originally the guy who was supposed to play Django. And then he decides that After Earth is the more interesting movie to make. And he passes up on Django and does After Earth.
Talk about someone who had the whole world in his hand and just made every wrong decision possible.
I could not believe he's the guy that just kind of feels like a Tarantino movie could really help his image.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, people would get excited if Will Smith got tasked as a Tarantino, if like Tarantino wrote him a role like that. And like Tarantino was on the press, like sticking up for Will Smith. And he's like, yeah, Will was the only guy who could play this guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It just like,
it made me think of 2 other names actually. So one more serious and one kind of just joking, but so the more serious one is Andy Serkis. I'd like to see him in a Quentin Tarantino film, not as CGI, like not Smeagol, but you know, Andy Serkis.
Serkis is good. He's a very good actor.
Really good actor, and I think that Quentin could definitely use someone with that kind of range. And then the other one, we talk about like an actor that needs a little bit of a career rehab. Like, what do you think about Tobey Maguire?
You know, I actually had him on like because I came up with like a list of 10. Tobey Maguire was weirdly in that list. Like it was one of those things where I was just like, you know, he's good friends with Leo. They've done a few movies together. One of them is like will never be seen by the public. I don't know if you've ever read that story. They like made this movie about like guys just like I think like basically just like picking up women in LA, and then it just you find out that it sounds like it's largely based on their real lives, and it's like pretty bad. And then they're like, we shelved it, and it has not been released. I think it was supposed to come out in like 1999.
Oh geez.
That one. Here's the thing.
He's a good actor.
Is he?
Yes.
I've never known how I feel about him.
Have you seen the movie that he did recently where he plays Bobby Fischer, the chess champion?
No, after Josh McCouga did that one interview with him. I think I've shown you that interview where he's just like, I always hate you.
Yeah,
Like you just have like a punchable look. I've never been able to take that movie seriously.
dude, that
I'm like
movie is
that.
good.
Is it?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I've always been mixed on him because I've never like been in love with his Spider-Man, but I've actually like come to appreciate that movie a lot more as the
Pizza time.
years go by. Pizza time.
Pizza time.
But like so like he's an interesting one. I'd almost put him on there. I'd almost feel like Andrew Garfield would maybe make more sense for
Maybe.
Tarantino. But I like the pick. I had Nicole Kidman too. Funny enough, because you mentioned The Northman, Anya
Mhm.
Taylor-Joy.
Mhm.
Nicole Kidman was actually the one after watching The Northman, like besides Skarsgård,
Yeah.
like she was the one that I'm just like, she's kind of incredible in this film, and the film really only works, not only works, but a film works in a large part because of what Nicole Kidman does in
Mhm.
the movie.
Mhm.
And then the other name I had was, and I just lost that name. I probably will not come back with the name, so we'll never know what that name was.
All right.
Uh, yeah, I'm not going to come back up with the name. But with that said, that was definitely my short list of people where I was just like, who needs it, who could do it really well,
Mhm.
and who would work really well with Tarantino. And it's so annoying because like the name is like on the tip of my tongue, and I don't think I'm gonna have it. But with that said, Josh,
Is it
thank you for
Ahmed
being.
Best?
No, it's not Ahmad Best.
Damn.
No, it's like, oh, it is like an actor who's
Mhm.
like a really interesting looking. Oh, Willem Dafoe.
Oh, Willem Dafoe. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Dafoe would be perfect for a Tarantino movie.
Yeah,
And with that
definitely.
said, I can end this show now proudly, knowing that I pulled that name. Josh, you want to plug your podcast real quick that you do every
Every now
week?
and then, you know, it's just whenever we bless you with another episode, but it's
Yeah.
called the 10-inch Talks.
Is it
Follow
called
us
the
on
10-inch talks or is
it's
it 10
just
inch
10-inch
talks?
Talks. It's 10-inch Talks. Sometimes it's the digits 10, and sometimes it's spelled out 10. You'll find us both ways at 10-inch Talks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for being on. We'll have you back on soon for Tron Legacy. That will be booked in the next week, and I will talk to you to confirm what day we're doing it.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I'm excited. Joseph Kaczynski's had a big summer.
Oh yeah.
Though
Yeah, he is.
I do want to attack one point you had because I did listen to your episode yesterday.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Did you actually see Joseph Kaczynski's newest film? Not Top Gun Maverick, his newest film that released on Netflix.
No, I didn't know you had another film that came out recently.
It's called Spiderhead with Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller.
I haven't seen that. Is it good?
No, it like actually like actively made me like wonder like how did he do Top Gun so well and then jump into this movie?
Probably he was focusing on Top Gun.
I hope that's the answer. It's not good. You should check out the movie though,
Are
because
you
it's like
sure that he directed it? Because it didn't come
pause.
up in the list.
No, positive. He just directed it. It came out to Netflix June of 2022, and it's like advertised because it's like Miles Teller and Joseph Kaczynski after Top Gun Maverick bring you Spiderhead.
Oh fuck.
Oh, dude, it's like you almost have to watch because it's kind of funny bad, and
No,
like there's some like pretty crazy stuff in there.
I'm okay. I won't do that.
I might have to make you watch it.
I'm trying to find the IMDb page right now
Yeah,
for.
Spiderhead is what it's called.
All right, so hold on a second. I'm going to. So Spiderhead. I'm seeing that now.
Yeah,
Oh wow,
Chris
it is
Hemsworth
directed by him.
with Kaczynski. Yeah, his
Very
movie.
interesting.
He's so lucky Top Gun Maverick hit so huge and then like it overshadowed Spiderhead because I feel like people were talking about Kaczynski and then like no one was talking about Spiderhead, which I think because I don't think Kaczynski toured for the movie. I don't think
Hmm,
he did any press for that movie. I think he
very
buried
interesting.
that movie. It's
I'm
bad.
I'm trying to see if there's a budget listed out here.
It's Netflix, so you'd have to assume probably about $400 million.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but that's interesting. I didn't know that he did this. I'm gonna go ahead and probably give him the benefit of the doubt on that.
I'm going to say that this movie was just made during COVID.
Mhm,
And like he just didn't get a fair shake at the movie, but it's
mhm.
not good. But
Yeah,
anyway, thank you for being on the show, Josh. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching. That is all. My name is Ben Friedman here from Ben and Bran See a Movie. Join us next week when we are talking another movie. I think it's School of Rock, but undetermined at this moment. Josh, thank you for joining me.
Yep.
And
Anytime.
have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace.